Talkaoke is a pop-up talk show. It was created by a collective called The People Speak. It's an incredible tool that creates this very democratic, agenda-free conversation of which anybody can come around the table. The first time I used that was actually in a school in Pendle, in Nelson, where we could facilitate these conversations between teachers and pupils about their learning and some creative learning that had gone on. At the time, it felt really refreshing. It was very, very challenging, particularly for teachers, to be in a conversation alongside their pupils, reflecting on what the learning had been in a traditional education structure where your teacher's at the front and your pupils. But I was really drawn to that process and Mikey's very well thought out concept, inspired by seeing chat shows on TV where important topics were being discussed, but it felt very controlled by the host of the show. He really wanted to create a structure that flipped that on its head so that the host is only there to make sure people are engaged, connections are made between conversation, but ultimately whoever sits around there starts the conversation. So we've used that tool now for the 10 years In-Situ has been running and done hundreds of conversations where, as a very flexible space, it can go anywhere. So town centres, in a pub or a festival or wherever, it can go pretty much anywhere. We've engaged people in a whole range of issues, discussions. It's been a really interesting tool to really create mixed audiences, to create very democratic discussions where you could have a counsellor around the table, a young person or someone from a health background, all having a conversation together that's not being led by any one person other than someone just keeping it going in the middle. And there's been some really pivotal moments where the conversation has been timely because of either a national or a global event where people have obviously wanted to talk about something and express something, and a couple of really key moments, particularly around some events that were linked to terrorism. One in particular is where we met Rauf, who heads up building bridges, who's a key partner now within it all. But basically we were hosting a conversation in the entrance of the Ace Centre, which was the day after the soldier Lee Rigby was murdered. And we were getting in quite a challenging conversation, which was a mainly white group of people. It was getting quite anti-Muslim or anti-Islamic. And the nature of it is it's people who are around the table set the agenda, so it's difficult if you've only got a perception from a certain group of people. But the beauty of Talkaoke, because it's very public, is that anybody can join the conversation. So at that point, Rauf walked in with his family. Instantly you gained a very balanced perspective because Rauf then talked very articulately about his Islamic faith, and it helped to balance out the conversation. And then obviously getting to know Rauf, building bridges have really embraced Talkaoke as a tool, and we do much of this work together, whether it's bringing different schools together from different backgrounds to kind of meet together and have public conversations. The key to it, I think, has been where we've had that very public conversation, and historically that could be quite a nerve-wracking process because you've no idea who's going to sit down around the table. And I have to say, as much as we've had very difficult conversations sometimes, because it's so well thought out and facilitated, they've always been constructive because the process allows a conversation to get deeper rather than someone just blasting out a tweet or a post, whatever. They're engaging in the conversation and having to listen to each other on that process. Talkaoke, I think, has been one of those very visible processes that I think the town and towns around Pendle are used to now, and it gets used much more. It's been used in the development of the new corporate plan for the council, which was This is Pendle, and use that as a way of engaging people. There's confidence now in that it can be a tool that can tackle the really difficult issues that we need to address, really, in a very open, democratic way. So during COVID, Talkaoke became an incredible, valuable tool to continue to engage with people. So really early on, the team who are doing this nationally were very quick to think about ways of which we can make it work. As an organisation, I felt like we were very quick to use some of those processes like Zoom instantly to be able to keep doing some of the work that we did. And Talkaoke seemed to fit quite well within the digital realm. You could still have quite a visible element to Talkaoke. You could still have a host and it could still welcome anybody who wanted to turn up on the Zoom to talk about something in particular. And so it very quickly became something that became quite regular in the period of COVID, where we could still meet with people. And what it started to do was really respond very quickly to those conversations that people needed to have, because they were either isolated or they were dealing with very particular things. There was one conversation which actually was already planned in the diary with Pendleside Hospice, where we were exploring death and dying as a concept, and it was in the Dying Matters week. And we could still progress that with this format that we developed online. And it meant that actually we could open the discussion to people outside of Pendle as well. People were really opening up about their experiences of losing people during COVID. And I remember there was one guy who actually was the hearse driver for the local mosque who came on the call. And he just talked about how he'd responded to allow Islamic funerals to have people pay their respects by literally driving around the streets, of which he could do so people could do it. And these stories were being told through the Talkaoke process, but in a digital format. I remember with the Pendle Hill Landscape Partnership project, there were some real challenges around people accessing Pendle Hill, going to Barley as a place, and people being reluctant to receiving all these people when restrictions lifted slightly. We had quite a difficult conversation with residents of Barley about what that has meant, what could be potential future solutions to that. But again, a format that was just still really useful, even though it wasn't physically face-to-face. Obviously, we're now back to working face-to-face, and it still continues to be a tool that enables us to tackle all sorts of issues, whether that be at an event that's got a particular theme, that it's easy to be able to steer the agenda that way for people who are there for that particular reason. And so we've used it a lot within the This Is Nelson process to help us think about those ideas of how we take things forward. The council have started to adopt it as a way they can continue to engage with people on things like the corporate plan, something which historically has always been done in-house, created within the councillors and the officers that then become the council plan. This year was the first time that it actually engaged people in all the towns and villages of Pendle, using Talkaoke as a tool as well as other methods as well, to allow people to have a voice into that was then fed into the process. So again, something that we really was pushing as a tool individually, this strange thing popping up in town centres that people weren't sure what to do with or how to approach it, now feels accepted, and it doesn't feel unique anymore as a thing. It's just a tool that is now part and parcel of engagement in Pendle.